Shalom Lekulam and welcome to our class number 6, lesson number 6 on the intermediate for Kabbalah. In our last lesson we covered basically Adan Kadmon, the concept of Adan Kadmon, how that system appeared, and also we covered how the different Partzufim that follow Adan Kadmon, like Ab, Sag, Ma, and Bon, developed, how they developed, and also how the Simpson Bet, the second restriction, the second Simpson happened. In order to start properly the class, we're gonna go back again and read our intention for this class, which is the same one as the second class. I study only for the sake of His name and for the sake of the unification of the collective soul of all humanity. Adam Harishon. May the Creator bring peace to all the parts of our soul, now and forever. And like I mentioned in the other class, is the purpose of studying Kabbalah is not about gaining knowledge, about becoming wise with this method. It's Kabbalah is a wisdom. It's also a science. Kabbalah involves basically all the sciences that are out there. A lot of people won't believe that, but it's true. If they study Kabbalah, they're gonna see that Kabbalah basically involves all these sciences like biology, physics, quantum physics. It's a lot of the ideas in quantum physics. The Kabbalists were already talking about it, especially the book of the Zohar has a lot of it. And also, like the philosophies and wisdoms that we see out there, when you study Kabbalah, you're gonna see that it's a very universal wisdom, a very universal science. That's why a lot of people are able to find some type of connection between Kabbalah and their own, let's say, belief systems, and it's because Kabbalah is universal. It's a universal knowledge, universal wisdom for all humankind, and it's not necessarily Jewish in the sense, that we present it as with the Jewish taste and everything. Is because it was kept within the frame of Judaism, protected within the frame of Judaism. And Judaism basically took Kabbalah and used it as a light for its own development, and also to serve as a nourishment for the traditions within Judaism. So do not confuse Kabbalah with Judaism. There's a lot of Jewish taste in it, but it's because it was developed within the framework of the people of Israel. Okay, so let's go and start with what we covered so far. So in the last lesson we covered the development of the direct light and the desires, and we said that basically this is the blueprint of what's gonna happen in the future. So Chokmah is pure desire to receive, Bina is pure desire to give, Tiferet is basically desire to receive in order to bestow, and these three desires are at that moment basically controlled by the Creator. But then there's an independent desire that is born out of these three development of the direct light, and is the one called Malchut, which is an independent desire to receive. There's a creature basically, and also we covered that there's two desires basically, or two forces in the creation of of everything, and is those two forces are called desire to receive and desire to bestow. Okay, and that after this Malchut of Ein Sof felt shame because it wanted to receive everything, it became very egoistical. It created a masach, a screen, and that screen basically stopped the vessel from receiving the light. So from this level, it went basically to this level, which stopped the light from entering. But then now it needs to develop into a system that will become like Tifaret, which is a system that will receive in order to bestow. And in order to do that, it needs to create different system or different Partzufim within itself, and work with different vessels of bestowals and different vessels of reception. So the Masach that was created here after Malchut felt shame, that created the first Simpson Aleph, the first restriction, and that it's also called Olam Adam Kadmon, which is the world of Adam Kadmon, the primordial man. And we mentioned that Adam Kadmon is basically a vessel or a system within the vessel that will start making calculations, and these calculations are gonna basically fulfill the purpose of the vessel, which is receiving the light in order to bestow. However, when Adam Kadmon, which is gonna be known as Galgalta, start receiving the light, it does not let the light pass below a tabur, which is the Simpson Aleph, right? And some of the vessels remain empty below the tabur, until we have then another system. That in this system, what we're gonna see is that different Partzufim are gonna develop, and these Partzufim are gonna be the ones that will allow or will help the light get basically inside the vessel. So Galgalta, we mentioned that has Hitlashut and Aviut of 4. So Hitlashut is basically the memories of the light, and Aviut is the memories of the desire. So in this case, it's Malchut the Malchut. So it wants to receive everything, like we mentioned before, but it created a restriction. This is Galgalta is basically all Simpson Aleph. It's all Simpson Aleph. Then when it rejects the light becomes surrounding light. So Or Makif, which is surrounding light, is a result of the light that gets rejected, which is Or Hoser. And when there's a little bit of that light coming in, like it happened in Galgalta, it's called Or Pinimi, internal light. That light puts pressure in the tabur. Together with the Or Makif, which is the surrounding light, they put pressure on the tabur, and that makes the tabur basically rise up all the way to the Peh of Parsuf Galgalta, and from there, through the Nekudot, that which is the light that gets reflected, through the Nekudot, it creates the next Parsuf, which is Parsuf Av. And Parsuf Av, it's from Hitlashu 4, Aviu 3, and the same thing as Sivuk the Haka, which is coupling by striking. Basically, the light couples with the Parsuf by striking it, and it makes some of the light go inside. But the pressure of the internal light together with the external light makes the tabur go up to the Peh of Parsuf Av and creates Bina. In Bina, the same process happens. There's a Sivuk de Haka, and light goes in, the Or Makif puts pressure on the Parsuf, and as the tabur is rising itself, something happened, and is that in the Nekudot, you're gonna find Keter, Bina, Chokma, Serampin, and Mahut in this here, right? But Sag is from the aspect of Bina. So if you have Bina, and then as it is purifying, it reaches the level of Bina, which is level 2, as we mentioned in the previous lesson, then it can give or pass light below the tabur. This is pure bestowal. So that's what's happened. And what happened is, during that, is that there's an interaction with these vessels here that are basically Marhut and the vessels of Bina, which are Vistol. And Malchut reception, Bina's Vistol. So Bina gives some of its attributes to Malchut. So Malchut, can receive some of that light, but Malchut also gives some attributes to Bina, and that's why the next thing that happened is that Malchut raises itself all the way to the first 1/3 of Tiferet, and makes a tzimtzum, makes a restriction there, and that restriction creates another barrier, and that barrier is called the Parsa. And the Parsa is basically just like the Tabur, a barrier that will not allow the light to go below these vessels, the vessels of Nehim, because these vessels are vessels of reception. And all that basically is happening right now is that this Parsuf is going to work with the vessels of Bistol. But these vessels of Bistol, when it's working just with those vessels of Bistol, is basically considered that the Parsuf is in a level or in a state of Katnut, which is smallness. So, like we mentioned before, when this happened, basically for the Parsuf to be in the level of Katnut, it actually happened by a sivug that was made in something called Galgalta Enaim, alright, the vessels of Bistol. So let's read a little bit from a book that I wrote, and I'm gonna start using it, for the lessons. So Parsusag, let me go back here. Parsusag has Hitlashu Gimel or Bina and Abiyut Beit, which is Chokmah. So we have basically Parsuf Sag right here. That's what they're talking about. This Parsuf right there. And the rising of Malchut the Sag to Tifaret the Sag expelled the Or Yechida and Or Chokmah from Reshimo 3, which is Bina of Sag. This leaves the Parsuf with a Hitlashut 2 and a View 2. But this is what's happening when this here, is happening, when the light is it's leaving its or the Parsuf is being purified. And this create a pure Bina, a pure desire to bestow. The Reshimo 2 can go to the haKelim under the Tabur. This action takes place during the development of the Parsuf Ma. Nekudot the Sag, as it will be learned, is an intermediate Parsuf between Parsuf Sag and Parsuf Ma. So what happened is, this area here, right, Nekudot the Sag, so Nekudot the Sag is going to become a Parsuf itself. and it's an intermediate Parsuf, so it's in the middle between that transition of Bina becoming Ma. So, and when I say Bina, I'm saying Sag. So Sag, that transition of Sag to become Ma or Bina, or the level of Bina to Seramping. In here, this is a Parsuf that is intermediate, that is in the middle or in between those two, and it's called Nekudot the Sag. Not to be confused with another Parsuf that is going to develop later, which is called the World of Nekudim. Two different Parsuf. So remember Nekudot. Okay, what is Nekudot and what is Nekudim? Because Nekudim, as we're gonna say pretty soon, belongs to a different Parsuf. So Nekudot is here, and Nekudim is gonna be in Ma. So Nekudot the Sag sees that the vessels of Nehim, the vessels are down here, lack the appropriate screens. So they don't have the proper screens in order to receive that light. And if the light is received, that will mean that these vessels of Nehim, they will receive egoistically. They're not ready for it. They don't have an intention other than receiving. They need to start developing an intention to receive in order to give. But right now, those vessels are not ready. So Malchut rose to Tiferet and separates the haKelim of reception from those of bestowal. So this is what happened. Malchut rises itself to Tiferet, specifically to the between the 1/3 and the 2/3 of Tiferet. So Tiferet is divided into 3, and the upper part of Tiferet is the 1/3. It's where the Parsa or new Siyum or new ending is gonna be. Below the Parsa, no light is gonna enter, and that is what is called Simpson Bet, or the second restriction. Okay, the Simpson Bet. In Simpson Bet, the light is restricted in the upper Bina of the goof. This is Bina here, and basically this is goof. So all this here, this is called basically the goof, which is body. And a sivuk is made in Nikveh 9 to create Parsuf Ma of Adam Kadmon, which is the next Parsuf that we see. We're gonna see around here, and that's basically Ma right here, which is Seramping. This Parsuf is called the world of Nekudim of lower Ma. When Malchut rose to Bina, the goof, the sivuk was not made in the Peh, but in Nikveh 9, thus making Olam HaNekudim be in a state of Katnut. So remember Nekudot the Sag. Now Ma is the world of Nekudim. But when Ma is born basically in a state of Katnut, because what we have is a Parsuf that is using only the vessels of bestowal, so Gargarta and 9. So remember in our previous class we talked about the Rosh. So the Rosh is also divided in the same way as the lower part of the vessel. You're gonna have there, the 10 Sefirot, Keter, Chokma, Bina, Seramping with the 6 Sefirot, and Malchut. That'll make the 10. But in Nikveh 9, it's basically where the vessels of bestowals and the vessels of receptions are divided. So when it says here, that a sivuk was made in Nikveh 9 to create Parsuf Ma. So what happened is the light comes in and makes a Partzuf right here. And of course, light gets rejected as always. It's Masach. And that creates Partzuf Ma of Adam Kadmon. This Partzuf is called the World of Nekudim. So this create basically the World of Nekudim. The World of Nekudim is located right here. Okay, that's the World of Nekudim. Before the World of Nekudim, what you're gonna have is Nekudot de Sag, and Nekudot de Sag is basically the transition of Sag to Ma. Okay, so that's the difference between those two. And as I mentioned in our previous class, this is basically the preamble of what's gonna happen in the book of Bereshit. When the book of Bereshit start talking about what happened before, is after this, because next a Sivuda Haka is gonna take place in the Rosh that will create then, or will make the light go all the way to these vessels of bestowal that are vessels of reception. And basically when these vessels receive that light, remember when I said these lights are not ready, they don't have a screen, so that will actually break those vessels. And as you can see, it breaks them all the way, even above the Parsa. So we're going to talk about that. So now the word of what we call the World of Nekudim. The World of Nekudim is basically defined or is controlled now by Simpson Bet. Everything before that, it's controlled by Simpson Aleph. Not until a Partzuf appear after the Shevirat haKelim, which is the Partzuf Atik, in which it appears, and it appears to be kind of separated from all the other Partzuf that are gonna be created after that in order to do the correction. It appears that Partzuf is kind of like not restricted by the Simpson Bet, but by Simpson Aleph. But once we get there, you're gonna see why that happened only with that Partzuf. Okay, so the Shevirat haKelim, let me read a little bit here. The Kelim of Kabbalah interacted with the Kelim of Hashpa'ah when Malchut and Bina influence each other, which is what happened over here. And then Malchut raised itself to the first 1/3 of Tiferet, creating the Simpson Bet. A Sivuk basically, or also, a Sivuk was made in Niveh 9, the middle of Bina, where the Hiblashu 2 and Aviv 1. Simpson Bet also created a new boundary in the Guf known as Parsa. From this point, and only altruistic desires are used. The basically all the vessels that are used are Gagalta and 9. So when you see Gagalta 9 the Keter, Gagalta 9 Avi, Gagalta 9 Son, what you need to understand is that each of those levels, so Keter, Hod Mavina, and Tiferet, they're basically divided the same way that as they see here. Okay, so you're gonna have Gagalta 9 and a Hapanden. So the Simpson Aleph, the Tamin of Alankamon does not pass the tabur, right? So we cover that. That's basically the light doesn't pass the tabur. It's because of sag that then the light, goes lower to below the tabur, and then start interacting with Mahut, with those vessels of reception. Trying to read here and trying to look at it, because this is from the book that I wrote, and I want to make sure I don't use a lot of the words that I have in the book so I don't confuse. Okay. So we have Olam HaNekudim and a state of Kanut. Okay, and with 3 levels: Keter de Nekudim, the degree of Vak Devina, which is vessels of Vistol; Avi in the degree of Serampin, which is here, which is also known as 2 heads. So basically they're known as Abba Ve'ima, they're always together, so they're known as 2 Roshim, And then Sat, Sefirot Hagat Nehim, which are the Guf of Nekudim, which is zone right here, Galgalta 9. And basically, it says here, we have covered the world of Kudim with its binding lights or Sefirot under one another inside the vessel. It also contains the potential creation. It is known as Hayuli. At this point, it is very important to know and remember that Olam HaNekudim is known as Olam HaTohu. So remember that, because in Bereshit, which we're going to study as we go with these lessons, Olam HaNekudim, whenever you read in the book of Bereshit that the world was empty and in chaos, is referring to Olam HaTohu. This world of chaos will precipitate the breaking of the vessels and the corrections of these vessels as well. This correction takes place in the Olam HaBerudim, or world of connections, from which the world of correction, which is Atzilut, will emerge. So that will happen, after the Shevirat, around after Attic appears and all that. You will have what is called the Olam HaBerudim, or world of connections, and this is all based in the wordings that the Ari using his or not the Ari, but his disciple Chaim Vital used when he was writing about the teachings of the Arizal, and he wrote there, this vocabulary that was used by the Arizal, like Olam HaNekudim, Olam HaBerudim, and Olam HaNekudim is the word of the Hu. So it's the word of like dots, and the Olam HaBerudim is the word of connections. Also remember that Simpson Aleph, or in the Simpson Aleph, all parts were under one another. So in Simpson Aleph, you're gonna have all these vessels: Keter, Hod, Mabina, Chesed, Geburah, and Nesahod, Yesod, Mahut. They're under each other, just like a ladder, right? In Simpson Bet, however, all the hap are inside Galgalta 9 of the lower levels. This allows an exchange of information between the parts. This type of arrangement is a system known as Sulam, or ladder. So what's going to happen is you're going to have these vessels basically interacting with each other. So you have the hap, right? Which the light is not entering there because there was a Parsa. These vessels here are pure bestowal. Malchut rose all the way to the 1/3 of Tiferet and created a Parsa, and also created the Simpson Bet. Okay. So Simpson Bet is basically right there. And these vessels here have no screen at all. Then above the Parsa, you're gonna have Gargalta and 9 covering these vessels of reception. Okay, and what you have is you have Keter, which is pure Gargalta 9. Then you have Avi, has 2 heads, Gargalta 9, Gargalta 9, 1/2. Then Son, which has basically Serampia Mahut, Gargalta 9, Serampia Mahut. Alright? But down here is pure reception, it's pure Mahut. And nothing can go there. If the light is sent basically to these vessels here, this light can actually break not only these vessels, but also some of the vessels appear as well, which is what's going to happen in the future. So what you're going to have is basically a breaking of all these vessels here. Okay, Bina interactions with my hood basically creates that type of restriction, right? But there's something that happened later, and it's the following. So after a sivug was done in the restricted regimot of 2 and 1, which made what we call Nekudot the Sag. I mean the World of Nekudim. Then a sivug was made on Regimot 4-3, and this actually was done in Pe of Pe, which is basically the very bottom of the Pe here. So it was done on, let me pick another color, it was done in the mouth of the Rosh. Remember the Rosh, that's where we do our calculations. That's where whatever happened here will affect what is here. So when that was done, then the light goes all the way down, and the vessels that we have down here that are not ready, they don't have that screen, they break. So the Shevirat haKelim happened basically because the light came down and these vessels were not ready to receive it. They were very egoistic. They didn't have a masach. If they have a masach, then they will receive little by little to the point that they will work out, with this with the light. But the light broke them apart. And what happened was the following. The area that was breaking creates basically an issue. Let me now go to the next slide here, and is that if we mention here, this is the World of Nekudim, then Nekudim and Gatlut, the World of Nekudim and Katnut right here. This is working only with the vessels of Vistol. This is where Malchut went to Bina, or to the 1/3 of Tiferet, creating the Parsa. So nothing was passing the Parsa, but then the light came down here and destroyed, basically, or broke the 10 Sefirot of Son. So you have Son right here, and Son was restricted basically to use only the Gargalta and 9. Now, not only the Hap of Zon was broken, but also the upper part. Okay, and now what we have is basically from Avi, or Abba Beima, all the way to Keter, that is not broken. It wasn't basically affected by the breaking of the vessel. So that's basically what happened. So it says here, and I'm gonna read what we have here. Let me see if I can move this so it'll be easier to see. Okay, there you go. And what happened is the following: is that there are 4 stages of development in Avi and Yeshut. And you guys are gonna say, okay, what is Yeshut? So Yeshut is basically an acronym for Israel Saba. She's Israel Saba Betavuna. A calculation is made in the breaking of the vessel. The Masach of Avi in Gatlut refines and raises together the remaining Reshimot Hiplachut 3 and Aviu 2 to Rosh de Avi. After performing a Sivug in Reshimot 3-2, it produces another Parsuf with a Rosh called Yesud. And Yesud is basically the Malchut of Avi, and it's known as Israel Saba Betevuna. They're basically the Mochin, the brains of Serampin. And Parsu Yesud start at the Sefirat Tifaret of Avi. So if you have Avi, Tifaret will be here. So Yesud is going to be located around that area right there. So it'll be like around this area here. Okay, that will be Yesud. So Yesud, in Avi and Yesud, there are 8 Kelim, 8 vessels, and these vessels are called the Melachim. They are called the kings, and this is based on the book of Bereshit, where it says, that there were 8 kings that ruled before there was any king in Israel, right? And the symbolism here is those names of those kings are used in order to describe what is called the breaking of these vessels, as the Sivug was happening in the Rosh and the Mochim. So you have 8 Melachim, 8 kings, times 4 stages of development. Remember the stages of development that we talked before. Stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 means Malchut, 1 meaning Chokmah, 2 Binah, and 3 Tifaret. So 8 times 4 equals 32. So you got 32 of those basically vessels, and each vessel contains 10 Sefirot, which equals to 320 Sefirot, which is the total sum of all the Sefirot. The first 9 of those 320 equals 228, which is basically 220 minus 32. The remaining 32 are the stony heart, or they're so egoistic that there's no way to be corrected. So there can only be corrected gamar tikkun. So only when the correction is done in all these vessels will be able to ascend as well. 2 Partzufim with 2 Sivugim, Abi and Yesud, are regarded as one Partzuf. they are known as Israel's Saba Betebuna, or lower part of Bina. So you have basically Keter, Chokmah, Bina, and the lower part of Bina is gonna be Yesud, okay? And that basically breaks as well. So there are 4 stages, right? The Tamin, the Nekudot, the Tamin, Tagin, Nekudot, and then the Atiyot. And we're gonna touch base on what does that mean with those things as we go along. So what's gonna happen is this haKelim that broke, that's basically for us to understand where the concept of the 288 sparks that fell it fell basically to the world of darkness, which is the world where there's no light down here, actually means. So they fell, and they need to be basically rescued by corrections, and these corrections are gonna be made in the future by the creation of a special Parsuf. And that special Parsuf, the only way that Parsuf can be created is with another Sibut de Haka. And what you need to understand is that right now the whole system that we've been basically talking about, from here to here, from Galgalta Ab to Sag, that's all called basically Olam Adan Kadmon, the world of Adan Kadmon. Now, from Parsuf Ma, from this Parsuf here down, Parsuf Ma is the world of Nekudim. So you have Keter, Chokmah, Bina is Adan Kadmon, Serampin is the world of Nekudim. Okay, and I want to make sure my yes was above. And Bon is basically the world of correction, or the word of Atzilut. Okay, so let's put it this way: Keter, Chokmah, Bina are gonna be Olam, Adam, Kadmon. Okay. Now we get Olam Kadmon. Then what we're gonna have is Zeramping, which is Sag actually. Zeramping is Olam HaNekudim. And Bon, which is Malchut. I'm just gonna put Malchut. Malchut is basically Olam Atzilut. So this is Kab Sag Galgalta. And Seramping is basically Ma. And Malchut is basically Bon. And that's how the whole system basically works. Sure, okay. So take note of that, you know. So Galta Absak is Olam Adam Kadmon, Ma, Olam HaNekudim, and Bon is Olam Atzilut. Olam Atzilut is the word of correction, and that's where from there on we're gonna see how creation becomes manifested. Okay, so we have a lot of information here, and I don't want to jump into talking about Attic, because talking about Attic is going to give us a preamble of what's going to happen afterwards, you know, with the Partzufim that are created after Attic, like adding camping and all the other Partzuf all the way. And also we need to talk about the word of Atzilut and the words of Biyah. And right now here we haven't mentioned the words of Biyah, the word of Atzilut, word of Biyah, but there's already a place in here for them. There's a place, you know, that we can say, you know, this is basically below the Parsa is Biyah, and above here is Atzilut. But we don't want to. I didn't want to jump into that in order not to give you, you know, a lot of information and confuse you, because I bet you it's already confusing. But what you need to understand is the following: is that from Galgalta, Simpson Aleph was basically the rule in Ab. Then Sag, after he made the purifications, you know, that he's supposed to do, it became, you know, a Bina and Bina with when the Nekudot the Sag basically was able to give light below the Tabur. So Bina Bina and Nekudot the Sag helped the light go all the way down below the Tabur, which was something that wasn't happening with Simpson Aleph. Now it is happening, but Malchut, as it interacted with the forces of Bina, created a Simpson Bet, created a second restriction, because these vessels called Nehim were not ready to receive. They didn't have a screen. So by doing that restriction, then the vessels that received the light were the vessels of bestowal only. So now we have basically the World of Nekudim, or Partzuf Ma, which is here in Seramping, right, in a state of Katnut, So in the state of Katnut, this Partzuf cannot remain. This Partzuf is Partzuf, if you remember, is Seramping, so it needs to receive in order to bestow. It cannot be just be bestowed and stay in that state of basically a state of Bina, right? In order to become Seramping, needs to receive. So it starts receiving. It does a sivug on Pe de Pe instead of Nikve 9, which is what created the creation of the Partzuf in Katnut. So then Ma grew in what is called Gatlut. In the state of Gatlut, it received the light all the way down to the vessels of reception that were restricted by the ascension of Malchut, and that created basically a breaking, a Shevirat haKelim, a breaking of the vessels. And these vessels broke. They're considered basically, when something breaks in Kabbalah, means, you know, they don't have a screen, so they just shatter, and they were in there basically 10 Sefirot of Son. Son, remember when it was when that Parsu was in Katnut, Son was in a state of Galgal Tainaim, only the vessel of reception. But then, by the Nekudim becoming in Gadlut, then the 10 Sefirot of Son broke. Each 10 Sefirot, they have basically 4 stages. I mentioned here the stage of Tamin, the stage of Tagin, the stage of Nekudot, and Atiyot. And these stages times the 8 Melachim or 8 Sefirot that broke equals 32. Each of those 32 Kelim or vessels have 10 Sefirot, so you had 320. Out of the 220, you had to subtract 32, which are the stony heart, which are really below down here. They fell really down there. We cannot correct them, and the only way to correct them is by correcting the 288 vessels that we can correct. Basically, the 9 Sefirot. Everything that is Mahut in those 320 vessels, everything that is Mahut we cannot correct unless we correct first the first 9, which we're capable of doing that. And only Gamar Tikum, which is the end of corrections, that's when the stony heart is going to be able to be corrected. So that's where we are right now. Then after that, remember, this world of Nekudim is called the world of chaos that we are going to be reading in the book of Bereshit. Then after that, there's a world that is created, and that world is going to be Parsubon. And Parsubon is the world of correction, the world of Atzilut. And that world of Atzilut is where we're going to start basically knowing about as we read the book of Bereshit. So in the next lesson, we're going to talk about the world of correction, which is Atzilut, and the world of Bia, and how inside this world there's some Partzufim that are developed, and also with the breaking of these vessels, how these vessels got basically intermixed with each other to the point that we can use these different levels. Actually, we can see it here. We can use these different levels in order to create the corrections that we need. So that is something that is very interesting to understand, because you're gonna see that Garta 9 here in Keter, that's gonna be used to create the world of Atzilut, and then the Hap is used to create the words of Bia. Okay, so until the next lesson, in which we're gonna be talking about the world of correction, Atzilut, we're gonna be talking about Atik and Arin Camping and all the other Partzufim that are created in order to correct this breaking of the vessels, and how these Partzufim are gonna then help us jump into the creation of a creature that we know as Adam Harishon, and what is the purpose of Adam Harishon in creation, what was supposed to be its mission in all this system that we've been studying. Until the next lesson, so I hope you have enjoyed. There's a lot of information here. Watch this video 1, 2 times, 3 times. If you have any questions, something that wasn't clear, or something that you want more explanation, let me know. You can go to our website at www.receivingtheupperlight.com, and in there you will have a place in which you can contact me and send me basically an email requesting anything like these drawings in PDF form, or any question that you have that we need to clarify something or anything like that. And those questions are gonna be, I have already a few questions, that I'm gonna be using in some of the future classes. But those questions are gonna be answered in future classes. If you have questions, just send them in, and I will have them answer in the following class. So, like I said, next lesson is going to be on the word of correction, Atzilut, and the words of Bia, and also the Partzufim that are basically created inside this world. So, until then, I'll see you. Shalom and Lehitraut.